There is a terrifying moment in every broken marriage when you realize that the person sleeping next to you is no longer your partner, but a complete stranger who is actively plotting your destruction. My name is Evelyn. I am 32 years old, and for a long time, I genuinely believed that my life was an absolute American fairy tale. I had a beautiful sunlit house with a white picket fence in a prestigious Connecticut suburb, a successful husband named Brad who earned an excellent living as a senior financial analyst on Wall Street, and a beautiful 3-year-old daughter named Lily, who was the absolute center of my universe. Before Lily was born, I was a successful interior designer in Manhattan. I loved textures, colors, and creating beautiful spaces where people felt safe. But after a difficult pregnancy and a long, exhausting recovery, I decided to pause my career and focus entirely on being a mother. For 3 years, my life was a repetitive loop of baby purees, pediatric appointments, educational toys, and chronic sleep deprivation. Brad was always busy at his corporate office, working late hours, managing high-stakes portfolios, and climbing the executive ladder. "Evelyn, look at yourself," Brad said one Tuesday evening, pouring himself a glass of expensive Napa Valley Cabernet while looking at me with a critical, clinical gaze. I was wearing an oversized, faded gray sweatshirt. My dark hair was tied into a messy, careless bun, and there were dark, heavy circles under my eyes from waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning with Lily. "You are completely exhausted. You don't design anymore, you don't go out with your friends, and our house looks like a chaotic daycare center. We need help. I have already contacted a high-end domestic agency in Greenwich. We are hiring a live-in nanny." I froze, setting down Lily's plastic plate on the granite kitchen counter. "A live-in nanny, Brad? Our house isn't that big, and I want to raise my daughter myself. I don't want a stranger living in our guest room, participating in our private life." Brad let out a sharp, irritated sigh, tapping his fingers against his crystal wine glass. "It is not a discussion, Evelyn. It is a logical solution. I pay the bills, I fund this lifestyle, and I want a wife who has the time to look like a human being, not just a tired maid. The agency is sending a candidate tomorrow morning. Her name is Chloe. She is 22 years old, a student at a local pedagogical college, and she has flawless references. When a husband looks at you with that cold financial authority, reminding you exactly who earns the money in the family, it is very hard to argue without feeling small and dependent." The next morning, at exactly 9 o'clock, the front doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Chloe was standing on the porch, and my first internal reaction was a profound sense of relief. She didn't look like a dangerous, seductive Hollywood stereotype of a nanny. She looked incredibly simple, almost invisible. She was wearing a loose, oversized beige knitted sweater, cheap blue jeans, and simple white sneakers. Her light brown hair was pulled back into a tight, neat ponytail, and she wore absolutely no makeup on her pale, youthful face. Her eyes were wide, blue, and filled with a quiet, submissive shyness. "Good morning, Mrs. Evelyn," Chloe whispered. Her voice so soft and gentle it sounded like a quiet rustle of autumn leaves. She held a small canvas tote bag in her hands, her fingers nervously gripping the straps. "It is an absolute honor to meet you. I have brought all my college recommendations and my medical certificates." Within 48 hours, Chloe had integrated into our household with the smooth, silent precision of an invisible shadow. She was an absolute natural with Lily. She could calm my daughter down during a violent tantrum in less than 2 minutes, using a low, hypnotic singing voice that made even me feel relaxed. She cleaned the kitchen without making a sound, she organized the laundry perfectly, and she always disappeared into the western guest room the exact moment Brad returned home from his Manhattan office at 2100 hours. "See," Brad said 3 weeks later, wrapping his arms around my waist as we stood in the kitchen, watching Chloe push Lily on the garden swing through the window. "I told you it was the right decision. You look rested, Evelyn. You are finally wearing your nice dresses again." "Yes," I murmured, leaning back against his chest, trying to ignore a strange, microscopic knot of anxiety that was beginning to form in the pit of my stomach. "She is perfect. Almost too perfect." The first shift in the atmosphere happened during the second month. It was so subtle, so deeply hidden beneath the layers of daily routine that if I had complained to anyone, I would have looked like a paranoid, insecure housewife. Started with the smells. Chloe's simple, cheap canvas bag and her oversized sweaters had always smelled like baby powder and vanilla fabric softener. But one Thursday afternoon, while Chloe was taking Lily for a long walk in the nearby park, I walked into the guest bathroom to replace the fresh towels. As I opened the wooden cabinet, a heavy, intoxicating wave of scent hit my nose. It was a rich, complex perfume, a dark blend of black orchid, patchouli, and expensive French leather. I knew that smell instantly. It was the exact luxury perfume that Brad had bought for me during our anniversary trip to Paris 2 years ago. A limited edition bottle that cost $400 and could only be purchased in high-end boutiques. I opened Chloe's small cosmetic bag on the shelf. Tucked beneath her cheap drugstore creams and basic lip balms was a brand new, heavy glass bottle of that exact French perfume. It was almost completely full, its gold cap glittering in the dim light of the bathroom. My breath hitched in my throat. A cold, heavy drop of dread settled in my chest. A 22-year-old student living on a modest nanny salary could never afford a $400 bottle of French luxury perfume. That evening, when Brad came home, he didn't head straight to the kitchen as usual. He walked past me, his eyes fixed on his smartphone, his mind clearly preoccupied. As he brushed past my shoulder, the heavy scent of black orchid and French leather followed him like a physical ghost, completely replacing the smell of his usual mint aftershave. The human mind has a remarkable, almost pathetic ability to protect itself from a painful truth. For 3 whole days, I tried to invent logical explanations for that $400 bottle of French perfume. Perhaps Chloe's parents had saved up to buy her a luxury gift. Perhaps she had bought a highly realistic counterfeit online. Perhaps it was just a bizarre coincidence. But deep down, in that quiet, instinctual corner of my soul, I already knew the truth. The beautiful Connecticut house I had decorated with so much love was no longer a sanctuary. It was a stage for a silent, disgusting betrayal. I began to watch them. I didn't change my behavior, I didn't scream, and I didn't ask questions. I simply became a ghost in my own home, observing every single micro-expression, every single shift in body language between my husband and our quiet, submissive nanny. It was the tiny details that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. I noticed how Brad's posture would instantly straighten the moment he heard the soft padding of Chloe's white sneakers coming down the stairs. I noticed how Chloe, who always kept her eyes fixed firmly on the floor when speaking to me, would occasionally look up at Brad with a quick, intense, and incredibly confident gaze that lasted just a fraction of a second too long. One hot Friday afternoon, the humidity in the house was almost unbearable. Lily was taking her usual 2-hour nap in her upstairs bedroom. I was down in the basement laundry room, sorting through a pile of white linens. The heavy commercial washing machine was humming loudly, creating a wall of sound that masked my movements. I finished folding a basket of towels and walked up the wooden basement stairs. As I reached the kitchen doorway, I stopped. Brad had returned home from his Wall Street office early. It was only 14 o'clock. He was standing by the massive stainless steel refrigerator, his expensive silk tie slightly loosened. Chloe was standing right next to him, holding a tall glass of iced water. She was no longer wearing her oversized, baggy beige sweater. Because of the intense summer heat, she was wearing a simple, tight-fitting white-ribbed tank top that left her shoulders bare. They weren't kissing. They weren't even touching. But the psychological space between them was completely gone. Brad was leaning down, his face mere inches from hers, whispering something in a low, gravelly voice that I couldn't hear over the distant hum of the basement machine. Chloe didn't look shy or submissive anymore. She was smiling, a slow, knowing, highly manipulative smile that made her look 10 years older. She reached out her right hand, her fingers casually, slowly brushing a stray piece of ice from the lapel of Brad's expensive tailored suit jacket. It was a gesture of absolute, undeniable intimacy. It was the gesture of a woman who owned the man she was touching. My heart hammered against my ribs like a wild animal. A hot wave of pure, unadulterated rage rushed through my veins, but I forced my jaw to lock tightly. I closed my eyes, took one deep, silent breath, and stepped heavily onto the hardwood floor of the kitchen, purposely making my footsteps loud. In a fraction of a second, the invisible string between them snapped. Chloe instantly dropped her hand, her face resetting into that familiar, timid, pale mask of a shy college student. Brad coughed nervously, turning around and taking a sudden, heavy gulp of his iced water. "Oh, Evelyn," Brad stammered, his eyes darting around the room, avoiding my gaze. I didn't hear you come up. The traffic on the highway was absolutely terrible, so I decided to finish my financial reports from home today." "I see," I said, keeping my voice perfectly flat, completely devoid of any emotion. I walked past them, my eyes fixed on the granite counter. "Chloe, could you please check on Lily? I think she might be waking up from her nap soon." "Of course, Mrs. Evelyn," Chloe whispered softly, nodding her head submissively. She grabbed her canvas bag and quickly glided out of the kitchen, her white sneakers making absolutely no sound on the floor. That evening, the psychological warfare turned physical. It was 2300 hours, and the house was dead silent. Lily was fast asleep, and Chloe had long since locked herself in the western guest room. Brad was already in our master bed, pretending to sleep, his back turned firmly toward my side of the mattress. I sat at my vanity table, brushing my dark hair in the dim glow of a single lamp. My hands were shaking. I stood up, walked over to Brad's side of the bed, and picked up his expensive tailored trousers from the leather armchair where he had carelessly thrown them. I pretended to look for his dry cleaning receipt, but my hands went straight to the small, hidden pockets of his designer jacket. Deep inside the interior silk lining, my fingers brushed against a small, stiff piece of paper. Pulled it out. It was a printed reservation confirmation for a luxury boutique hotel in Manhattan, located just 3 blocks away from Brad's corporate office. The reservation was for the upcoming weekend, from Friday afternoon to Sunday evening. It was booked under Brad's name, but the guest count explicitly specified 2 adults. And right next to the reservation paper was a tiny, elegant black box from a high-end jewelry store on Fifth Avenue. I opened the box with a trembling hand. Inside, resting on a bed of black velvet, was a stunning white gold bracelet studded with miniature diamonds. A cold, bitter laugh bubbled up in my throat, but I suppressed it, shoving the papers and the jewelry box back into his jacket pocket. The trap was fully set. They weren't just having a dirty, shameful affair under my roof. They were planning a luxury weekend getaway while I stayed home in the suburbs, taking care of our daughter and managing the house. I looked at Brad's sleeping form, his heavy, rhythmic breathing filling the dark bedroom. The sadness I had felt for the past few weeks completely vanished, replaced by an ice-cold, clinical determination. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to file for a messy, predictable divorce that would tie up our assets for years and break my daughter's heart in a public courtroom. Well, I was an interior designer. I knew exactly how to dismantle a structure, piece by piece, until the entire foundation collapsed on the people inside. The most dangerous thing you can give a betrayed woman is time. For 5 whole days, I played the part of the perfect, oblivious suburban housewife. I cooked Brad's favorite dinners. I smiled at Chloe as she handed me Lily's drawing pads, and I never once let my eyes linger on the jacket hanging in the hallway closet. They thought they were master manipulators, playing a high-stakes game right under my nose. They had no idea I had already rewritten the rules. On Wednesday morning, while Chloe was upstairs teaching Lily a new alphabet song, I called my old college friend Sarah. Sarah wasn't just a friend. She was one of the sharpest forensic divorce attorneys in Hartford, Connecticut. "Evelyn," Sarah said, her voice dropping into a professional, serious tone after I explained the hotel reservation and the diamond bracelet. "If you confront him now, his lawyers will hide his Wall Street bonuses in offshore accounts before you can even sign the paperwork. In Connecticut, we need undeniable, ironclad proof of dissipation of marital assets and marital misconduct to secure the house and full custody without a brutal court war. I need names, dates, and photographic evidence." "You'll have everything by Friday night, Sarah," I replied, my voice steady, my heart feeling like a block of polished marble. Just prepare the asset freeze documents. I'll handle the design of the trap. On Thursday evening at the dinner table, I dropped the first piece of bait. Brad, honey, I said, casually cutting a piece of grilled chicken on my plate. My mother called from Greenwich today. Her chronic back pain is flaring up again, and she needs me to come over this weekend to help her with the medical appointments. I was thinking of taking Lily with me and staying there from Friday afternoon until Sunday evening. I watched Brad's face closely. A sudden microscopic spark of absolute joy flashed in his eyes, though he quickly masked it with a concerned, loving frown. "Oh, that's terrible about your mother, Ev," he said, setting down his fork and reaching across the table to squeeze my hand with a sickening display of affection. "Of course you should go. Take Lily, spend some time with her. Don't worry about the house. I have a massive financial audit to finish for the Wall Street portfolio anyway, so I'll probably just lock myself in my home office and work straight through the weekend." "And what about Chloe?" I turned my gaze to the nanny, who was quietly wiping Lily's sticky fingers with a napkin. "Chloe, you deserve a weekend off. You can head back to your college dorm as soon as we leave on Friday." "Thank you, Mrs. Evelyn," Chloe murmured, her pale face looking entirely innocent. "That is very kind of you. I'll pack my things." But beneath the table, I knew exactly what was happening. They thought the universe had handed them the perfect, golden opportunity. The wife and child were leaving town, the massive house would be completely empty, and they wouldn't even need to drive to Manhattan to use the luxury hotel boutique. They could save the reservation money, stay right here in our master bed, and celebrate their brilliant victory. Friday afternoon arrived with a heavy, suffocating summer heat. At 14 o'clock, I packed Lily's small pink suitcase into the trunk of my SUV. Brad stood on the porch, wearing a relaxed linen shirt, waving goodbye with a warm, deceptive smile. Chloe stood a few feet behind him, her canvas tote bag slung over her shoulder, pretending to wait for her Uber. I buckled Lily into her car seat, climbed into the driver's seat, and drove out of the prestigious neighborhood. But I didn't drive to Greenwich. I drove exactly 3 blocks away, to a quiet commercial parking lot hidden behind a row of thick pine trees. I turned off the engine, pulled out my iPad, and opened a specialized security application. 2 years ago, when we first renovated the house, I had personally designed the security network. Brad knew about the visible cameras near the front door and the garage, but he had completely forgotten about the advanced high-definition smart cameras hidden inside the smoke detectors of the master bedroom, the living room, and the dark library, cameras I had installed to monitor the contractor teams during the heavy construction phase. I clicked on the master bedroom live feed. The screen flickered, and my stomach turned a violent, sickening knot, but I forced myself to keep watching. It had been exactly 25 minutes since I drove away. They hadn't even waited for the sun to go down. Brad and Chloe were already in my master bedroom. The shy, submissive college student mask was completely gone. Chloe was laughing, a loud, arrogant and triumphant sound that echoed through the iPad speakers. She was wearing my silk robe, the $400 French perfume glittering on my vanity table behind her. Brad was sitting on the edge of our mattress, unbuttoning his shirt, holding the small black velvet box from Fifth Avenue. He slipped the white gold diamond bracelet onto her wrist, and Chloe leaned down, kissing him with a hungry, desperate greed. "She is so incredibly stupid," Chloe's voice came through the digital audio speaker, clear and sharp. "She actually thinks I care about her daughter's alphabet songs. How long until you file the papers, Brad? I'm tired of living in the guest room like a servant." "Soon, babe, very soon," Brad muttered, wrapping his arms around her waist. "My financial team is already restructuring the real estate deeds. By the time Evelyn realizes what's happening, this house will be under my corporate holding company, and she'll be lucky if she gets enough money to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in the slums." I sat in the silence of my car, the hot summer sun beating down on the windshield. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were perfectly still. I clicked the save button, downloading the entire high-definition video file, complete with clear faces, audio confessions, and financial fraud admissions. directly into a secure cloud folder, and forwarded the link to Sarah's private legal email. Got it. Sarah's text message arrived exactly 60 seconds later. This isn't just a divorce asset victory, Evelyn. This is criminal conspiracy to hide marital assets. I am filing an emergency ex parte motion with the Hartford Family Court right now. By Monday morning, his Wall Street accounts will be completely frozen. Excellent, I typed back, a cold, dark smile spreading across my lips. But Monday morning is far too long to wait. I think it's time to change the interior layout of their weekend right now. The true beauty of a professional interior designer's work doesn't lie in choosing the right colors. It lies in knowing exactly which wall is structural, and which one can be torn down to bring the whole ceiling crashing down. I didn't drive back to the house to scream at them. That would be an amateur's move, a chaotic emotional outburst that would give them a chance to defend themselves, to construct a web of lies, or to delete files from Brad's computer. No, a cold revenge requires careful logistics. Instead of turning the car around, I pulled out my phone and made 2 highly strategic phone calls. The first call was to Mr. and Mrs. Vance, Chloe's deeply religious, ultra-conservative parents who lived in a small, traditional farming town in upstate New York. They were incredibly proud of their sweet, innocent daughter who had won a scholarship to a prestigious Connecticut college. They believed she was working as a respectable tutor for a high-society family to pay for her textbooks. Mrs. Vance, I said, my voice dripping with sweet, trembling concern. This is Evelyn, Chloe's employer. I'm calling because I am deeply, deeply worried about Chloe. She left her medical journal on the kitchen counter and, well, she told me she has been feeling terribly sick. I noticed some older man in a luxury car dropping her off at our house late at night. I think she might be mixed up with a dangerous, wealthy predator who is taking advantage of her youth. As a mother, I couldn't just sit in silence. They are at my house right now. I am so afraid for her safety. A sharp, terrified gasp came from the other end of the line. Oh my dear Lord. Grab your coat. We are driving to Connecticut right now. Mrs. Vance screamed to her husband, her voice shaking with righteous parental fury. Evelyn, thank you. We will be there in 3 hours. The second call was far more clinical. I dialed the private, direct number of Arthur Harrington, the senior founding partner of the Wall Street financial firm where Brad worked. Arthur was a man of the old guard, a billionaire who despised corporate scandals, and a man who had personally signed Brad's employment contract. He also happened to be a close friend of my late father. Arthur, I said smoothly, the cold rain of my emotions completely hidden. I am calling to inform you that Brad will not be attending the International Portfolio Conference next week. He is currently at our suburban home, actively using his corporate laptop to transfer marital assets into an unauthorized offshore holding company to evade a pending court order. And Arthur, he is doing it while caught on high-definition security footage in an extremely compromising position with our 22-year-old domestic employee. I am sending the secure digital file to your corporate compliance team in exactly 5 minutes, before the family court freezes the accounts on Monday. There was a long, heavy, terrifying silence on the Wall Street line. When Arthur spoke, his voice sounded like 2 massive blocks of granite grinding together. Evelyn, your father was a great man. I am deeply sorry for this disgusting behavior. Send the file immediately. Our legal department will handle his corporate clearance before the market opens. By 20 o'clock that evening, the trap was fully sprung. I drove my SUV back into our quiet, affluent neighborhood, parking it casually across the street from our house. Lily was fast asleep in her car seat, completely oblivious to the corporate and domestic warfare about to unfold. Within 10 minutes, a dusty old family sedan with New York license plates slammed its brakes right in our driveway. Mr. and Mrs. Vance scrambled out of the vehicle, their faces pale with panic and determination. At the exact same second, a black corporate town car pulled up, and 2 men in dark tailored suits, the private security and compliance officers from Brad's Wall Street firm, stepped onto the gravel path. I climbed out of my car, walked across the street, and met them all on the front porch. Evelyn! Mrs. Vance cried, grabbing my arms. Where is she? Where is our little girl? They are upstairs, Mrs. Vance, I said, handing her my spare electronic keycard with a sympathetic, sad smile. In the master bedroom. I think he has trapped her there. Mr. Vance didn't wait. He snatched the keycard, slammed it against the digital lock, and threw the heavy oak door open. The entire group, the furious religious parents and the cold professional corporate auditors, marched down the long hallway and up the grand staircase like an army of retribution. I followed them slowly, leaning against the doorframe of my own bedroom, watching the final layout of my marriage completely disintegrate. The scene was absolute glorious chaos. Brad and Chloe were caught completely off guard, lounging on my expensive Egyptian cotton sheets. Chloe was still wearing my silk robe, the white gold diamond bracelet glittering on her wrist under the bright chandeliers. Chloe Elizabeth Vance, Mr. Vance roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple as he pointed a trembling, calloused finger at his daughter. What in the name of God is the meaning of this? Chloe shrieked, scrambling backward, her pale, submissive mask completely shattering as she tried to pull the blanket over her shoulders. Dad! Mom! What are you doing here? Brad bolted upright, his eyes wide with absolute terror as he looked past the screaming parents and locked eyes with the two corporate compliance officers from Wall Street. One of them pulled out an official corporate document and a digital tablet. Bradford Sterling, the compliance officer said in a flat, robotic voice. As of 19:30 hours tonight, your security clearance at Harrington & Associates has been permanently revoked. You are being officially terminated for gross moral misconduct, violation of corporate ethics, and unauthorized use of proprietary financial networks to commit personal asset fraud. Your corporate accounts, bonuses, and options are officially frozen pending a federal audit. No, wait. Arthur. Let me call Arthur. Brad stammered, his face turning entirely translucent, his voice cracking like a terrified teenager's. He looked at me, standing in the doorway with my arms crossed, a calm, relaxed smile on my face. Evelyn, what did you do? You crazy bitch. What did you do to my life? I didn't do anything to your life, Brad, I said, my voice echoing with a beautiful, crystal-clear confidence through the chaotic bedroom. You designed this layout yourself. I just invited the clients to see the finished product. Mrs. Vance was already dragging a crying, hysterical Chloe out of the bed by her arm, slapping the diamond bracelet off her wrist onto the hardwood floor. Mr. Vance looked at Brad with a level of pure disgust that guaranteed Brad would never be able to show his face in their town again. The aftermath of a controlled demolition is always quiet. Once the dust settles and the screaming stops, all that remains is the cold, hard data of reality. Chloe was dragged out of my house by her parents that very night, sobbing hysterically into the back seat of their dusty sedan. Her college scholarship was revoked 2 weeks later due to a formal morality complaint filed by the domestic agency, which was desperate to salvage its own reputation. She was sent back to her small hometown, stripped of her high society dreams, her expensive French perfume, and her white gold diamond bracelet, which now sat in my safe deposit box. Brad's downfall was even more spectacular. Because Sarah and her legal team had filed the emergency motion before the market opened on Monday, Brad had absolutely no time to hide his financial assets. The high-definition video from the smoke detectors, with his clear recorded voice admitting to restructuring real estate deeds to defraud his wife, became the ultimate weapon in the Hartford family court. The judge, thoroughly disgusted by the evidence of corporate asset dissipation and domestic misconduct, ruled entirely in my favor. I was awarded full, sole custody of Lily, our prestigious Connecticut estate, and 65% of Brad's frozen Wall Street investments as a lump-sum divorce settlement. Brad lost his job, his corporate reputation, and his high society friends in a matter of days. In the brutal world of Wall Street finance, once you are flagged by a billionaire like Arthur Harrington for ethical fraud, you become toxic. No firm in Manhattan would even look at his resume. He had to sell his luxury sports car just to pay his corporate defense lawyers. 1 year after that explosive Friday night, I was sitting in my brand new independent interior design studio in downtown Greenwich. The space was beautiful. High ceilings, raw brick walls, large industrial windows, and absolutely no dark guest rooms. My career had completely restarted, and my boutique firm was already booked for the next 12 months by affluent clients who respected my strength and my eye for detail. Lily was playing happily on the sheepskin rug in the corner of my office, building a colorful tower out of wooden blocks, her laughter filling the sunlit room. Suddenly, my assistant walked in and set a small envelope on my desk. "Evelyn, this was just left at the reception. It's a personal letter." I opened the envelope. Inside was a simple white paper, written in a shaky, desperate handwriting. It was from Brad. He was living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a noisy borough of Queens, working as a low-level tax accountant for a small retail firm. "Evelyn," the letter read, "I am writing this because I have lost everything. I can barely afford my rent, and my lawyers say I will be paying child support until I am 50 years old. I made a disgusting mistake with Chloe. She was nothing to me, just a stupid distraction. I miss my daughter. I miss our house. I miss the life we built together. Please, Evelyn, can we just meet for a coffee? Can we talk about a second chance? For Lily's sake." I looked at the letter, then looked across the room at my beautiful, thriving daughter, who smiled up at me with her bright, clear eyes. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hatred. I felt the absolute, calm indifference of a master builder looking at an old piece of garbage that had been cleared from the construction site. I walked over to the office paper shredder, dropped the letter into the slot, and watched Brad's desperate pleas turn into thousands of useless white paper ribbons within 3 seconds. "Mommy," Lily asked, looking up from her blocks. "What was that?" "Just an old blueprint, sweetie," I smiled, walking over and kneeling down next to her on the rug, picking up a bright yellow block to help her finish the tower. "We don't need it anymore. We are building something completely new." Bar chart, what do you think of Evelyn's cold, calculated strategy? Did Brad and Chloe get exactly what they deserved? Or did Evelyn go too far by involving their parents and bosses? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love this intense life drama, unexpected plot twists, and powerful stories of ultimate justice and freedom, make sure to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming audio stories.